Mom, you're disruptive. So if you want to visit the girls, it's going to cost you $10,000 a month. That is exactly what my son said to me before handing me an invoice for being a grandmother. He thought he had me trapped. But instead of writing him a check, I locked him out of an $82 million inheritance while securing his daughter's future without giving him a single dime. It started on a Tuesday in November, the kind of Tuesday that feels deceptively normal. The sky was a sharp, biting blue. I remember driving over to Brian and Jessica's house, humming along to the radio, thinking about the Thanksgiving menu. I was going to offer to pay for the catering again. I always did. It was my way of helping out without bruising Brian's fragile ego. I pulled into their driveway, a circular brick affair that cost more than my first house, and parked behind Brian's leased Audi Q7. The house was a sprawling, modern farmhouse thing that they had bought 2 years ago. It was beautiful, cold, but beautiful. It looked like a Pinterest board that no one actually lived in. When I walked in, the silence was heavy. Usually, the girls, Sophie, 7, and Chloe, 9, would come thundering down the hallway to tackle me. Sophie would ask if I had gum in my purse, I always did, and Chloe would want to show me a drawing. Today, silence. "Brian," I called out, setting my purse on the entryway table. "Jessica?" "We're in the dining room, Mom," Brian's voice floated out. It sounded stiff, rehearsed. I walked into the dining room. It was set up like a boardroom. Brian sat at the head of the table. Jessica sat to his right. There were no placemats, no coffee cups, no half-eaten bagels, just a polished mahogany surface and a single, thick manila folder resting in front of Brian. They were dressed up. Brian was wearing a blazer over a t-shirt, his tech CEO look, even though his consulting firm hadn't had a major client since the Obama administration. Jessica was wearing a beige cashmere sweater that probably cost $600, her hair pulled back in a severe tight bun. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my stomach doing a little flip. "Are the girls sick?" "The girls are upstairs with the iPad," Jessica said. She didn't look at me. She looked at a spot on the wall just above my left shoulder. "Sit down, Ellen. We need to have a family business meeting." I sat. I folded my hands in my lap to hide the tremor starting in my fingers. Family business? Is this about the house repairs? Because I told you I can help with the roof deductible if... "It's not about the roof," Brian interrupted. He placed a hand on the folder. "It's about the ecosystem of this family and your role in it." He took a breath, a long, dramatic inhale. "We've been doing some auditing," Brian said, "of our time, of our emotional bandwidth, and we've realized that your presence here is unstructured, it's disruptive. You come over unannounced, you undermine our parenting with gifts we didn't approve, you bring sugar when we're doing keto, you confuse the girls with outdated values." "I bring them cookies," I said, bewildered, "and I picked them up last week because Jessica forgot." Jessica's head snapped toward me. "I didn't forget. I was networking. That's work, Ellen. Not that you'd understand the modern economy." I almost laughed. I built a logistics empire from a single truck, but I bit my tongue. "Okay," I said slowly. "So you want me to call before I come over? I can do that. I thought we had an open door policy, but..." "It goes beyond calling," Brian said. He opened the folder. "We've consulted with a family strategist. To maintain the lifestyle the girls deserve and to compensate us for the management of your visitation, we've drawn up an agreement." He slid the paper across the table. I put on my reading glasses. The paper was heavy stock, cream-colored. It looked like a wedding invitation, but the words were pure legalese. Header: Visitation and Familial Contribution Agreement. Parties: the household of Brian Miller, the beneficiaries, and Ellen Miller, the contributor. I scanned down the page and my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a list of rules, it was a price sheet. Item 1. Scheduled visitation access, 4 hours per week maximum, $2,500 per month. Includes supervised interaction with Sophie and Chloe Miller. Note, any time exceeding 4 hours will be billed at an overtime rate of $250 per hour. Item 2, emotional labor and management retainer, $3,000 per month. Compensates parents for scheduling, coordination, and debriefing after grandmother's visits. Item 3, environmental disruption surcharge, $2,000 per month. Covers utility usage, wear and tear on the home during visits, and dietary rebalancing. Item 4, mandatory educational contribution, $2,500 per month. Direct payment to the Household General Fund for allocation toward future educational expenses. Total monthly retainer, $10,000, due on the 1st of every month. I looked up. I looked at my son, the boy I had nursed through asthma attacks, the teenager I had bailed out of credit card debt in college, the man whose wedding I had paid for, all $80,000 of it. "Is this a joke?" I asked. My voice was quiet. "Brian, tell me this is some kind of sick joke." "It's not a joke, Mom," Brian said. His eyes were cold. "It's a boundary. You have money, we have the children. You want access? You pay the entrance fee. It's simple market economics, supply and demand." "You're selling my granddaughters to me," I whispered. "We are managing access," Jessica corrected sharply. "You are exhausting, Ellen. You're critical, you judge our spending, you judge our parenting. If we're going to tolerate that energy, we need to be compensated. $10,000 is a fair market rate for the stress you cause." "And if I don't sign?" I asked. I felt a coldness spreading through my chest, starting at my heart and moving to my fingertips. Brian leaned back, crossing his arms. He looked so smug. "Then we implement the no-contact protocol. We will block your number. We will tell the school you are not authorized for pickup. We will file a restraining order if you step onto the property. We'll cite emotional instability. We'll say you're getting senile," Jessica added, a cruel little smile playing on her lips. "That you're confusing the girls. The courts always side with the parents, Ellen, especially parents who are protecting their children." They had rehearsed this, I could tell. They had sat up late at night, drinking their expensive wine, planning exactly how to corner me. They looked at my bank account and didn't see a mother's legacy. They saw a resource to be mined. I stared at the contract. $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. To them, it was just a number. To me, it was a ransom note. "I need to think about this," I said. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, like they were filled with lead. "You have until Friday," Brian said. "Friday at noon. If the first check isn't deposited by then, don't bother coming to Sophie's birthday party next week." Sophie's birthday. They were using a 7-year-old's birthday party as leverage. "I'll let you know," I said. I turned and walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at the stairs where my granddaughters were likely sitting, listening. I walked out the front door, past the perfectly manicured hedges, and got into my car. I drove 2 blocks before I had to pull over. I parked in front of a fire hydrant in a cul-de-sac of half-built luxury homes. I turned off the engine. And then I screamed. I screamed until my throat felt raw. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel, once, twice, 3 times, until my palms stung. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. I have money. I could afford $10,000 a month. It wouldn't bankrupt me. It was the cruelty. It was the realization that my son, the person I loved more than life itself, looked at me and saw nothing but an ATM. He didn't value my love. He didn't value the time I spent reading to the girls. He only valued what I could deposit. I sat there for 20 minutes, breathing hard, watching a construction crew work on a roof down the street. I watched them hauling shingles. Heavy, brutal work. It reminded me of Frank. My husband, Frank. We started Miller Logistics in 1985 with one beat-up Ford truck and a second mortgage that kept us awake for 3 years straight. We didn't have lifestyle consultants. We had instant coffee and sleepless nights. I did the dispatching from our kitchen table with a crying baby, Brian, on my hip. Frank drove the routes. We smelled like diesel and exhaustion for a decade. When Frank died 10 years ago, everyone in the industry thought I would sell. "Ellen's just the wife," they whispered at the funeral. "She doesn't know the operations. She'll cash out." They didn't know I was the one who negotiated the fuel contracts. They didn't know I was the one who aggressively acquired our 2 biggest competitors in 2008 when the market crashed. I didn't sell. I doubled the fleet. I expanded into cold chain storage for pharmaceuticals. I took the company from a regional carrier to a national powerhouse. When I finally sold the majority stake 3 years ago for $82 million, I didn't do it because I was tired. I did it because I wanted to spend time with my family. I wanted to be a grandmother. And now, that family was trying to shake me down like a common criminal. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. A different feeling took over. It was a cold, quiet sensation. It was the feeling I used to get right before I walked into a negotiation with the Teamsters Union. It was the feeling of knowing I was the smartest person in the room, and the other side had no idea what was coming. Brian and Jessica had made a critical error. They mistook my generosity for weakness. They thought that because I baked cookies and knitted sweaters, I was soft. They forgot that I was the CEO of Miller Logistics. They forgot that I had crushed competitors who were smarter, richer, and meaner than they would ever be. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. My mascara was smudged, but my eyes were clear. "Okay," I said aloud to the empty car. "You want a business arrangement? Let's do business." I didn't go home. I drove to the industrial district, to the south side of town. I pulled into the parking lot of a nondescript brick building next to a tire shop. The sign on the door said SR Accounting and Forensic Audits. Silas Reynolds. He was the man my corporate lawyers used when we suspected a regional manager was embezzling fuel funds. He was expensive, he smelled like stale pipe tobacco, and he could find a missing penny in a billion-dollar ledger. I walked in without an appointment. Silas was sitting behind a desk buried under stacks of paper. He looked up, peering over his spectacles. "Mrs. Miller," he grunted. "To what do I owe the honor? Hostile takeover?" "Something like that, Silas," I said, sitting down. "I need you to investigate someone. I need a full financial autopsy. Assets, debts, cash flow, credit lines, everything." "Who's the target?" Silas asked, grabbing a yellow legal pad. "Competitor?" "No," I said. "My son, Brian Miller, and his wife, Jessica." Silas paused. He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw the smudge of mascara. He saw the set of my jaw. He knew better than to ask why. "I'll need 48 hours, he said. "You have 24, I replied. "And Silas, I want receipts. I want to know where every single dollar I gave them in the last 5 years actually went." For the next 2 days, I entered what psychologists call the gray rock phase. It's a defense mechanism. You become a gray rock, uninteresting, unresponsive, boring. You give the abuser nothing to latch onto. Brian texted me on Wednesday morning. "Mom, just checking in. Have you reviewed the agreement? We have a slot open for visitation on Sunday if the funds clear." I stared at the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. The old Ellen would have texted back a paragraph of guilt and pleading. The old Ellen would have asked why. The new Ellen typed, "Hi, Brian. Yes, reading it now. It's a lot of paperwork. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I might need a few days to move some funds around. It's a large amount." I hit send. The reply came in 30 seconds. "Totally understand. Take your time. Just remember the Friday deadline for the wire transfer. We need to book the girls' enrichment classes." Enrichment classes, I scoffed. I spent the rest of Wednesday and Thursday morning gathering my own evidence. I went into my home office, a room Brian always mocked for being cluttered, and pulled out my filing cabinets. "I keep everything," Frank taught me that. "Paper has a memory, Ellen," he used to say. "People forget. Paper doesn't." I pulled out the files marked Brian. Venmo receipts. March 2019, $3,400, car repairs. August 2020, $6,000, Jessica's dental emergency. December 2021, $12,000, down payment assistance. July 2022, $4,500, Sophie's tuition deposit. I made a spreadsheet. I listed every loan that was never repaid. I listed every gift that was actually a bailout. I went back 5 years. The total was staggering. $243,000. I had given them $250,000 in 5 years, and they still dared to ask for rent. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Silas. "Meet me at the diner on 4th, he said. "You're going to want to sit down for this." I met him at the Galaxy Diner. It was a dive, but the coffee was strong. Silas was already there, tucking into a plate of eggs. He had a thick binder next to him. "Mrs. Miller," he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin, "your son isn't just broke, he's insolvent." He opened the binder. "Let's start with the income," Silas said. "Brian claims to be a consultant. His business entity, Miller Strategic Solutions, LLC, has had exactly 2 deposits in the last 6 months, one for $1,500 and one for $500. $2,000 in 6 months? I asked, stunned. "But they just bought a new Audi." "Leased," Silas corrected, "and they're 2 months behind on the payments." Now Jessica, she runs an influencer brand. She has generated 0 revenue this year. In fact, she's operating at a loss. She spent $14,000 on inventory, custom yoga mats that are sitting in a storage unit in New Jersey. "So how are they living?" I asked. "The house, the parties, the clothes?" "Debt," Silas said grimly. "They are living on a house of cards made of plastic. They have 9 credit cards, all maxed out. They have a HELOC, home equity line of credit on the house that is tapped dry. And last month," he flipped a page, "Brian took out a high-interest business loan from a predatory online lender, $150,000 at 28% interest. He used it to pay off the minimums on the credit cards to keep the scheme going." I felt sick, physically ill. They were burning money to look rich. "What about the girls?" I asked. "The school tuition?" Silas tapped a line item in red. "Unpaid since September. The school has sent 3 warning letters. They are 1 week away from expulsion." I closed my eyes. The invoice. The $10,000 invoice. "Item 4, I whispered. "Mandatory educational contribution." "Excuse me?" Silas asked. The contract he gave me, I said, opening my eyes. He asked for $2,500 specifically for education. He wasn't going to pay the school, was he? No, Silas said, shaking his head. Looking at these flows, if you gave him $10,000 today, it would go straight to the Audi payment and the country club dues. He's prioritizing the status symbols over the tuition. That was the moment the last shred of guilt evaporated. I wasn't a mother cutting off a struggling child. I was a responsible investor stopping a hemorrhage. Silas, I said, reaching for my checkbook, I need copies of all of this, certified if possible. Already done, he said. I left the diner with the binder tucked under my arm. It felt heavier than a brick. It felt like a weapon. Friday morning, the deadline. I didn't go to the bank. I went to the law offices of Henderson, Tate, and Moore. James Henderson has been my estate attorney for 30 years. He helped me set up the business trusts. He helped me when Frank died. He was an old-school lawyer, mahogany desk, green banker's lamp, and a belief that a handshake still meant something. I walked into his office at 9 a.m. sharp. "Ellen," James said, standing up, "you look determined. Coffee?" "No coffee, James," I said. "We need to work. I need to revoke my current will immediately." James sat down slowly. "Revoke? That's a strong step. You want to make an amendment?" "No," I said. "I want to tear it up. The current will leaves everything to Brian, correct? With a stipulation that he acts as trustee for the girls." "That is correct." "If I died today," I said, "Brian would inherit $82 million. Based on the intelligence I received yesterday, that money would be gone in 5 years, and my granddaughters would be destitute." I slid Silas's binder across the desk. "Look at the tabs." James adjusted his glasses and opened the binder. He spent 5 minutes reading in silence. I watched his eyebrows go up, then down, then furrow in deep concern. "Good God," he muttered, 28% interest on a business loan. He's drowning." "He's not just drowning," I said. "He's trying to pull me under, to use me as a flotation device. He demanded $10,000 a month to see Sophie and Chloe. He threatened a restraining order." James looked up, his face hardening. "He threatened you? His mother?" "He called it a disruption fee," I said. "So, James, here is what we are going to do. I want to create a generation-skipping trust, the GST." "The nuclear option," James nodded. "Aggressive. Go on." 100% of my assets, I said. The stocks, the bonds, the real estate portfolio, the cash, all of it goes into the trust. The beneficiaries are Sophie Miller and Chloe Miller, not Brian, not Jessica. "And the trustee?" James asked. "Usually you would name a family member." "Absolutely not," I said. "I want a corporate trustee. I want the coldest, strictest bank officer you can find, someone who follows the letter of the law. Brian cannot have access to a single penny of the principal." "Okay," James was taking furious notes. "And when do the girls get access?" "Age 25, I said, "but only for education, medical, or a first home down payment. Unrestricted access at age 35. I want them to have careers before they have my money." "And Brian?" James asked gently. "He is your only son, Ellen. Do you want to leave him anything? A token amount to prevent a contest of the will?" I thought about the invoice. Item 2, emotional labor fee. "No," I said. "Actually, yes. I want to include a clause, the safety net clause. If and only if Brian and Jessica can prove they are fully employed for 12 consecutive months and they submit to random drug testing, the trust can pay their rent directly to a landlord, capped at $3,000 a month. No cash, ever." James stopped writing. He looked at me with respect. "That is incredibly specific and ironclad." "Drafted," I said. I'll wait. I sat in that leather chair for 4 hours while James and his paralegals drafted the documents. I signed the papers at 1:45 p.m. At 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Brian. Mom, it's 2 o'clock. Checked the account, no wire transfer. This is disappointing. You are officially in breach of agreement. Do not come over. We will be contacting our lawyer. I stared at the text. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if there was a bank error. He just went straight to the threat. I typed back, "There was a delay with the bank. The transfer is complex. I'll bring a certified instrument to Sophie's party on Tuesday. Please, don't punish Sophie for a banking error." I held my breath. This was the gamble. They needed the money so badly they would break their own rules. 3 minutes later. Fine. Tuesday, 4 p.m. Bring the full amount plus a $500 late fee, or you stay on the porch. A late fee? He charged his mother a late fee. "I got him," I said to the empty waiting room. The weekend dragged. I spent it preparing. I wasn't just bringing the new will. I was bringing a presentation. I organized my documents into 3 distinct envelopes. Envelope 1, the Generation Skipping Trust, redacted copy. Envelope 2, the medical report. Envelope 3, the receipts. I had visited Dr. Aris, a neurologist, on Saturday. I paid out of pocket for an expedited evaluation. I did memory tests. I did logic puzzles. I had an MRI. "You have the brain of a 40-year-old, Dr. Aris had told me, handing me the certificate of mental competency. Whatever they're accusing you of, Ellen, it won't stick." Tuesday came, Sophie's birthday. I dressed carefully. I didn't wear my usual soft cardigans. I wore my navy blue St. John suit, the one I used to wear to board meetings. I put on my pearls. I put on my heels. I arrived at the house at 4 p.m. The driveway was full. They had invited everyone. The neighbors, the parents from the private school, the one they hadn't paid, Brian's business partners, who were likely just guys he drank scotch with. It was all for show, a facade of success to hide the rot underneath. I walked up the path carrying a pink gift bag for Sophie and my leather portfolio. Jessica blocked the door. She was wearing a white dress that looked like a bridal gown. "Do you have it?" she hissed, smiling fake sweetly for the neighbor walking behind me. "It's in the bag," I said, patting the portfolio. "Good," she whispered. "Put it in Brian's office, on the desk. Then you can go say hello. But if that envelope is light, you're leaving." I walked in. The house smelled of expensive catering, mini crab cakes and truffle oil. I navigated through the crowd. I saw Sophie near the fireplace, surrounded by other little girls in tulle dresses. "Grandma!" she shrieked. She abandoned her friends and ran to me. I dropped to my knees, not caring about my suit, and caught her. She felt solid and real. This was why I was fighting, not for the money, for her. "Happy birthday, my angel," I said, kissing her cheek. "Did you bring me a present?" "I did," I said, "but it's a grown-up present. You'll get it when you're older. For now," I pulled a small box out of my pocket. "I brought you this locket. It has a picture of your Grandpa Frank inside." She opened it. "It's pretty." I spent the next hour playing the role. I ate the cake. I nodded at the neighbors who told me how successful Brian was. "Oh, yes," one woman said. "Brian was just telling us about his new venture capital fund. He's doing so well." I just smiled. Brian has always had a vivid imagination. Around 5:30, the party started to wind down. The casual guests left. The core group remained, about 12 people Brian wanted to impress. Brian caught my eye from across the room. He tapped his watch. Then he pointed to the office door. It was time. I walked into the office. It was a masculine room, smelling of leather and unearned confidence. Brian followed me in. Jessica followed him. Then, Brian made a mistake. He didn't close the door all the way. He wanted the audience in the living room to hear him closing a deal. He wanted to sound powerful. "All right, Mom," Brian said, leaning against his desk. "Let's conclude this. Where's the check?"
I reached into my portfolio. My hands were steady. "I have 3 things for you, Brian," I said. "Just give me the check, Mom. Stop the drama," Brian sighed, extending his hand. "First," I said, placing envelope 1 on the desk, "this is for the invoices you sent me, the $10,000 a month." He tore it open. He expected a cashier's check. Instead, he pulled out the thick stack of stapled legal paper. He frowned. "What is this? This is a trust document?" He scanned the first page. His brow furrowed. "Ellen Miller Revocable Trust. Amended. Wait." He looked up, confused. "What is a generation skipping trust?" "It means the money skips a generation, Brian," I said clearly. My voice carried into the hallway. "It means that my assets, all $82 million of them, are now locked in a trust for Sophie and Chloe. They can access it when they are 25. You cannot access it. Ever." Jessica gasped. She snatched the papers from his hand. You disinherited us? You can't do that." "I didn't disinherit you," I said calmly. "I just bypassed you. You said you wanted a business arrangement. You said my visitation was a transaction. Well, I've decided to invest directly in the end product, my granddaughters, and cut out the middle management. You were charging too high a fee." "This is illegal," Brian shouted. His face was turning a blotchy red. "I'm your son. I have rights. I'll sue you. I'll prove you're incompetent." "Ah," I said. "I thought you might go there." I placed envelope 2 on the desk. "This," I said, "is a certified letter from Dr. Eris, the state's leading neurologist. I was tested on Saturday. I am of sound mind. I am cognitively sharp. In fact, Dr. Eris noted that my logic skills are in the 95th percentile. If you try to challenge the will based on competency, this document, plus your extortionate invoice, will be submitted to the court. The judge won't just throw out your case, Brian. He'll laugh at you." Brian looked like he had been punched in the gut. He slumped against the desk. "Mom, why? Why are you doing this? We're family." "Family?" I stepped closer. "Family doesn't charge admission. Family doesn't threaten restraining orders." "We needed the money!" Jessica screamed. The mask was off now. She wasn't the cool, collected socialite anymore. She was desperate. "We have expenses. We have a lifestyle to maintain for your granddaughters." "Let's talk about those expenses," I said. I placed envelope 3, the heavy binder from Silas, on the desk with a loud thud. "I had a forensic accountant look into your lifestyle, Brian." I opened the binder. I pointed to a page. "You tried to charge me $2,500 for an educational contribution, yet Sophie's tuition hasn't been paid in 3 months. Where did that money go?" I flipped the page. "It went to the Audi payment. It went to the country club. It went to this." I pointed to a charge. $1,200 for a tasting menu at Les Bernardins while your daughter's school was sending final notices." "Stop it," Brian whispered. He looked at the open door. He realized people were listening. "No," I said. "You wanted a meeting. We're having a meeting." I pulled out the list of debts. "You are $150,000 in debt to a predatory lender. You have maxed out 9 credit cards. You are insolvent, Brian. You are broke. And you tried to use me to plug the hole in your sinking ship." "We'll lose the house," Brian choked out. Tears were streaming down his face now. "Mom, please, if you don't help us, the bank takes the house next month." The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall.
I could hear the guests in the other room shuffling, whispering. This was the moment. The power shifted. The giant fell. I looked at my son. I didn't see the arrogance anymore. I saw a frightened child who had never been told no. "I know," I said softly. "So you'll help?" Jessica asked, hope flaring in her eyes. "You'll write the check?" "No," I said. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "I will not give you a single dollar," I said. "I will not pay your mortgage. I will not pay your car lease. I will not pay for your country club." "Then we're homeless!" Jessica shrieked. "You're making your granddaughters homeless." "Wrong," I said. "I have already prepaid the school tuition for the next 2 years. I called the headmaster this morning. Sophie and Chloe are safe at school." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. It was for a real estate agent I knew. "Here is your option," I said. "You sell this house, you sell the cars, you declare bankruptcy if you have to. You move into a rental you can actually afford. You get jobs, real jobs, not consulting, not influencing, jobs with W-2 forms." Brian stared at the card. "If you do that," I continued, "if you stabilize your life, I will match your income dollar for dollar into the girls' trust. Every dollar you earn, I double for them, but not for you. You never touch my money again." "But the neighbors," Brian whispered, "everyone will know." "They already know, Brian," I said, gesturing to the open door. "They've known for a long time that you're a fraud. I was the last one to figure it out." I closed my portfolio. "You have a choice. You can keep pretending to be rich and lose everything, including your daughters. Or you can be a man, accept you're starting over, and actually be a father." I turned to leave. "Mom, wait!" Brian lunged forward, grabbing my arm. I pulled back sharply. My voice dropped to a register I had never used with him before, a voice of absolute command. "Do not touch me." He recoiled. "The invoice is rejected," I said. "The new will is filed. Good luck, Brian." I walked out of the office. The living room was silent. The guests were pretending to look at their phones, pretending they hadn't heard everything. I walked through the crowd, head high. I saw Sophie playing in the corner. I didn't stop to hug her again. I couldn't. If I stopped, I would break down. I had to leave while I was still strong. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. I didn't cry this time. I felt light. For the first time in years, the weight of carrying my son was gone. The fallout was swift and brutal. Brian and Jessica tried to fight it for about a week. They went to 3 different lawyers, trying to find a loophole in the generation-skipping trust. Every lawyer told them the same thing. "Your mother is a shark. This trust is bulletproof. And if you sue her, that invoice you sent her will become public record. Do you really want a judge to see that?" They folded. The foreclosure notice came 30 days later. They tried to do a short sale, but the market was soft. They lost the house. The bank took it. They lost the cars. The repo man took the Audi from the driveway of their rental apartment 2 months later. It was ugly. It was humiliating. It was necessary. Jessica's brand collapsed when she couldn't post photos of a luxury life anymore. She actually had to go back to work. She's an assistant manager at a boutique now. She stands on her feet all day. And Brian? Brian hit rock bottom. He spent a month on his friend's couch after Jessica briefly kicked him out. But they got back together. Misery loves company, or maybe they just couldn't afford 2 apartments.